This day in sports history. It's September 13th, and on this day, over the course of many years, we had a couple of NFL firsts, a college football first, and the first reference to a famous baseball trio. All of that plus an epic 15 minutes, a raging bull, and a non-sports fun fact about where not to put the ashes of your loved ones. Stick around. It will be fun, and I promise you will learn something. Let's start with what happened on this day in 1992 with one of those NFL firsts. This was an early season marquee matchup between the Buffalo Bills and the San Francisco 49ers at Candlestick Park. A lot of folks wondered if this would be a preview of a potential Super Bowl matchup in 4 months. It was also a matchup of old USFL QBs, Steve Young and Jim Kelly. Now, if you remember, those two played in the greatest game nobody saw when Young was with the LA Express and Kelly was a Houston Gambler. The Express had a huge lead in that one behind Young's arm. The Gamblers fought back with Kelly throwing for 574 yards and getting the winning touchdown late. This game would kind of follow that script, and it started off in a similar fashion to that old USFL game, in that Young's Niners put a couple of scores on the board and took a 24-13 lead into the locker room at the half. Kelly connected with his tight end Keith Metzelaars on 2 touchdown passes in the third to put the Bills up 27-24. Young went back to work, and he found one of his favorite targets, John Taylor.
Odessa Turner and Mike Sherrard to the right. Young down the middle and wide open. Taylor breaking tackles. He'll go all the way for a touchdown. No fumble. He crossed the goal.
31-27 Niners back on top. But the Bills would not be denied, and instead of going to the air, they kept it on the ground. After converting a 4th and 4, Kelly gave it to Thurman Thomas.
41-27 San Francisco. Thurman Thomas breaks free, touchdown.
That put Buffalo back on top, and they were able to keep Young and the Niners out of the end zone for the remaining 3 minutes of the game. The Bills won 34-31. All right, so I hear you thinking, cool game, good Week 2 matchup, but what's so unique about this one? Well, I'm glad you asked. This was the first game in NFL history that did not have a single punt. Neither 49ers punter Klaus Wilmsmeyer nor Bills punter Chris Moore needed a shower after this one, just a little spritz of cologne for the ride home. Kelly finished the day with 22 completions for 403 yards, 3 touchdowns, and an interception. Young's numbers were similar with 26 completions for 449 yards, 3 touchdowns, and an INT. So that is more than 850 passing yards between the two, and when you figure in the rushing stats, these two teams combined for 1,086 total yards on the day. It did not, however, turn out to be a preview of Super Bowl 27. Buffalo did advance as the 4th best team in the AFC, but the Niners lost to the Cowboys in the NFC Championship game. So has there been another no-punt game in the NFL? Yep, 6 of them. It happened again 12 years later in a playoff game between Indianapolis and Kansas City. There were 2 no-punt games in 2014 and 2 more last season. This episode is brought to you by Sterling Roastery. For several months you've heard me talking about the great products and scents offered by the Sterling Soap Company. And while there may not seem to be any correlation between soap and coffee, what is similar is the same care and attention to detail in delivering great products to their customers. Sterling Roastery will ship great-tasting beans or ground coffee, for whatever coffee-making process you prefer, right to your door. I gave their breakfast blend a try recently, and I can tell you, it was a great way to get my day kick-started with this smooth, medium blend. And just like their soaps, they have a variety to choose from. Give Sterling Roastery a try at sterlingsoap.com. On this day in 1981, the Atlanta Falcons pulled off quite a 4th quarter to beat the Green Bay Packers. Now, this was not the greatest comeback of all time, far from it, but by the 4th quarter in this Week 2 game, the Packers were leading 17-0. A lot of it had to do with the 4 interceptions that Falcons quarterback Steve Bartkowski had thrown in the first 45 minutes. This was not some sort of Bartkowski redemption story, though. Instead, it was the Atlanta defense that made this massive surge in the fourth quarter possible with 2 defensive touchdowns. First, it was a pick six of a Lynn Dickey pass.
Dickey intercepted at the 20-yard line. Fulton Kuykendall. Kuykendall touchdown. The veteran linebacker Fulton Kuykendall intercepted and ran it in, and Atlanta takes the lead for the first time.
That made it 24-17 Falcons, and then they added a 57-yard scoop and score.
Dickey over the middle. Middleman this time, the ball was fumbled and it's picked up. And being raced into the end zone by Joel Williams, and he is in there for the touchdown.
The Falcons scored all 31 of their points in the final 15 minutes, tying the NFL record at that point. The Oakland Raiders had scored 31 in the fourth in a game in 1960, and they did it again in 1963. It would be 26 years before that record would be topped by the Detroit Lions, who scored 34 in a 2007 game. On this day in 2015, Tennessee Titan Marcus Mariotta became the first quarterback to record a perfect QB rating in his first start. The Titans opened up the season on the road at Tampa Bay, and this was a battle between the number 1 and number 2 picks in that year's NFL draft. Jameis Winston, top overall pick by the Bucs, versus Heisman Trophy winner and the number 2 pick in the NFL draft, Marcus Mariota. The QB battle was close, but the score on the scoreboard was not. Mariota completed 13 of 15 passes for 209 yards and 4 touchdowns. Winston completed 16 of 33 for 210 yards, 2 touchdowns, and 2 INTs. Mariota's QB rating at the end of the day was a perfect 158.3. He joined Drew Bledsoe and Robert Griffin III as the only other rookies to do that, and the only one to do it in their first career start. On this day in 1958, Florida State's Vic Prinzi scored the first ever 2-point conversion. The NCAA had instituted the ability to go for 2 in the offseason as a response to a lack of scoring. This was week 1 of the 58 season, and Florida State was hosting Tennessee Tech in an early afternoon kickoff. The Seminoles won the coin toss, and they elected to receive. They took the opening drive down the field in a hurry, and they scored. Seminoles coach Tom Nugent was an innovative guy, and since the announcement of the 2-point conversion that spring, he'd devised a couple of plays to make it work. It wasn't anything fancy, but quarterback Vic Prinzi took the snap and he rolled to the right, diving into the end zone for the 2-point conversion. Florida State beat everybody else to the punch by a few minutes to become the first to do it in college football history. Prinzi later worked for 18 seasons as the color analyst on Florida State radio broadcasts alongside legend Gene Deckerhoff. On this day in 1951, the Raging Bull used every tactic and just about every second to retain his title. Jake LaMotta is known for a lot of things. His 6 fights with Sugar Ray Robinson, taking a dive in his 1947 fight with Billy Fox that got him suspended from boxing, and of course being the focal point of Martin Scorsese's 1980 biopic, Raging Bull. He was also known to feign injury or play possum during a fight to lure his opponent in and deliver a fresh round of punishment. He was not a pretty fighter. There was nothing analytic about him either. He stepped into the ring, and in every one of them except for the one against Fox that he threw, it was a 2-man war with no survivors. He started his boxing career as a light heavyweight, but had limited success there. When he trimmed down a few more pounds and dropped into the middleweight class, he rose up the ranks and eventually won the middleweight title. On this night in 1951, he was defending that belt against Frenchman Laurent Dauthuille. These two had met 2 years earlier, with the unranked and underdog Dauthuille winning a unanimous decision. That was before LaMotta had risen to number 1, so it knocked him a few rungs down the ladder. He climbed back up in the next 2 years to the top of the middleweight division. LaMotta was again the favorite in this one, but he did not fight like one in the early rounds. Dauthuille kept his distance, but landed punches and retreated, rinse and repeat for the first 6 rounds to take a lead on all scorecards. The referee even warned LaMotta to get moving and fight. By the 12th, it looked like Dauthuille was going to beat the Bull. He landed an overhand right to LaMotta's face that stung him. He wandered around the ring shaking his head and looking dazed, but it was just his possum tactic. When the Frenchman moved in to throw another flurry, he was met by a barrage of blows to close out the final seconds of the round. LaMotta's signs of life did not last long, however. He took more punishment in the 13th, and he looked so lethargic the crowd actually booed him. They went to the 15th and final round with only one hope for LaMotta. He had to knock out Dauthuille, or he would have to cough up the belt. All the Frenchman had to do was stay out of the way, dance and move. Instead, his corner told him to go fight. In the last minute of the fight, Dauthuille delivered another hard right. Like an artist stepping back to admire their artistic strokes, Dauthuille retreated to admire the damage, and then he paid for it. LaMotta played it up even more for Dauthuille, falling back into the ropes not once, but twice. He looked like he was about to go down, but it was just another possum play.
And when the overconfident Dauthuille moves in for the finish, Jake LaMotta suddenly opens up. Dauthuille knows he's been fooled and tries to hold and run, but LaMotta, always devastating inside, won't let him get away. It's LaMotta to the body and to the head. Against the ropes, Dauthuille is in trouble. Dauthuille has knocked out some good men, such as Steve Balois and Charlie Civic, but tonight LaMotta has come on. Both men blaze away. It's a real Donnybrook. But LaMotta, rallying from the brink of defeat, knocks Dauthuille down and almost through the ropes. And LaMotta scores a dramatic knockout over the very capable Laurent Dauthuille. It's Jake LaMotta, one of the greatest crowd pleasers of all time, winner and still middleweight champion of the world.
When the referee counted him out, there were just 13 seconds left in the fight. LaMotta defended his title, but it would be the last time that he did. His sixth and final fight with Sugar Ray Robinson, that would end up being called the St. Valentine's Day Massacre, was 5 months away. So if you are a baseball fan, then you have undoubtedly heard the phrase tinker to Evers to Chance. That famed trio played for the Chicago Cubs for 10 seasons in the early 20th century. It was on this day in 1902 that for the first time, Johnny Evers started at shortstop, Joe Tinker was moved from third to play second base, and Frank Chance played first. They would become the most famous double-play trio in the history of the game in the early 20th century, though they didn't turn one in this game. Their first double play would not happen until the 15th, but the accolades were deserved, and it was also helped along by a little bit of prose. So first, the stats. In 1906, 07, 08, and again in 1910, the Cubs would win the National League pennant, winning the World Series in 07 and 08. Between 1906 and 1910, this trigonometric trio would turn 491 double plays, which was not the most during that span, but it was good enough for third. But nobody ever really remembers who comes in third, right? They must have had some help. And they did. It seems that back in the day, and I'm talking really early 1900s, no radio yet, no television obviously, that newspaper men were one of the few entertainment options available. Being wordsmiths and men of prose, sports writers would write little ditties. Well, the one about Tinker to Evers to Chance was a little bit of that, and a lot about a demanding editor that needed some space filled. The man who made Tinker to Evers to Chance familiar is Franklin Pierce Adams, a man with 3 rather presidential names. So he worked for the New York Daily Mail, writing a weekly column. Well, he was a bit overeager to get to the Polo Grounds to watch the New York Giants play the Cubs, but his editor needed a few more column inches out of him. He just needed to fill some space. It didn't need to be good, and this is what he came up with, although before I read it, you should know that a gonfalon is a flag. Okay, so here it is. These are the saddest of possible words, Tinker to Evers to Chance. Trio of bear cubs and fleeter than birds, Tinker and Evers and Chance. Ruthlessly pricking our gonfalon bubble, making a giant hit into a double. Words that are heavy with nothing but trouble, Tinker to Evers to Chance. Adams was not really happy with it, but it filled the space. His editor thought it was garbage, but it was printed in the July 12, 1910 edition of the Daily Mail. Maybe it was the Chumbawamba or the Mbop of its day, but people read it and they liked it. and it got picked up by other newspapers, and other writers added their own stanzas to it. It soon became a stand-in to describe something that happened like clockwork. Time now for today's That's Got Nothing to Do with Sports fun fact. This probably will not come as too much of a surprise, but Disney World is a popular place to spread the ashes of a loved one. Disney discourages this, of course, and denies entry if you are caught trying to bring ashes into the park, but a few folks slip through the cracks. Disney has a special vacuum for those that do, and it seems the most popular place to dispense a loved one's ashes is the Haunted Mansion. That's all I've got for you today. This and every episode of This Dish is researched, written, voiced, and produced by me, Steve White. Enjoy the rest of your day. I'll see you back here tomorrow for another edition of This Day in Sports History. This has been an original Thrive Suite production.